Now back to Smoke on the Water for more Straight Up with Sturge.
Welcome back in. It's 8:24 on this Hump Day edition of Straight Up with Sturge, coming to you live from Smoke on the Water. We're going to go to the guest line, bring in Jeff Borzello, college basketball and basketball recruiting writer for CBSSports.com. And Jeff, Price and I were just talking about this. One of the best things out there on college basketball is y'all's Night Court edition every evening on CBSSports.com. Even if I don't get to see the games, I feel like I learned something just by reading that column. Great job on that.
Well, I appreciate it. And, yeah, I mean, I was actually driving the other night, so I wasn't able to watch any games. But, Matt Norlander, one of the other guys at CBS, he put it together. And, you can pretty much read that, and you feel like you're caught up on anything you missed.
Yeah, it's almost like a little bit of the NFL red zone, if you will. But listen, we're sitting right at about the halfway point of this season. What's caught your attention? Because there's a lot of things that I thought were going to go on in college basketball this year that just haven't played out the way I thought it might.
Well, I think everyone came to the season looking at the freshmen, Andrew Wiggins, Jabari Parker, Julius Randle. But, as we enter, I guess, the final 6 weeks of the season, if you look at kind of the top 3 or 4 candidates for Player of the Year or All-American team, it's not really freshmen. You have Doug McDermott leading the way. He's probably the favorite for Player of the Year. And you have Marcus Smart, you have Shabazz Napier, DeAndre Kane. So, the main candidates for All-American, they're not really the freshmen that we all, those still are going to be the top 3 or 4 picks in the NBA draft, but they're not really dominating the college basketball landscape like, some of us thought.
Jeff Price Atkinson sitting here with Mark tonight. Let me ask you about Doug McBuckets and Creighton's drubbing of Villanova the other night in Philadelphia. I don't know about you, but that's when I flipped over and caught that score, I was just shocked. But do you think that, in my book, that came down right now, to me, it's the statement win of the year in college basketball? Everybody's not going to shoot like that every single night, but that one really just sent to me a statement throughout the college basketball landscape that, look, Creighton is here and they can play.
Yeah, I think that was maybe the most impressive, at least performance I've seen this year. Villanova had just entered the top 5. They were looking like the Big East favorite. Creighton was without Grant Gibbs. He's still injured. He's kind of their facilitator offensively. So you went into the game thinking, Villanova might win by 8 or 9. Creighton's not at full strength. We'll see them again later in the year. But, they come out, they hit 21 three-pointers. Ethan Raggi hit 9 three-pointers. McDermott had a double-double as always. Excuse me, McDermott didn't have a double-double, but, he had 23 points. So it was so impressive the way they came out, and everyone was hitting shots. And Villanova didn't play that poorly. They just could not keep up with Creighton. I don't think anybody would have beaten Creighton the way they played on Monday night.
Let's stay with another hot team in a team in Kansas out in the Big 12, probably the best league top to bottom this year in the country. But talk about Kansas, 4 straight wins over ranked opponents, most recently Monday night, a very solid win over a Baylor team that's now on the slide. But talk about Kansas as a team. I look at them, and I look at 3 really keys to their team. And none of them are Andrew Wiggins. I look at Perry Ellis, who to me kind of is that steady hand, Nadir Tharp, who's really the only point guard on their roster, and then also the development in what Joel Embiid has really started coming into his own in the last 2-3 weeks. But Andrew Wiggins is just really that steady guy. What are your thoughts on Kansas and just the basketball they've been playing the last couple weeks?
Yeah, I think the scary thing is that, it doesn't seem like they're playing to their potential yet, despite the fact that they beat the other 5 best teams in the Big 12 besides them. They're 5-0. They're playing terrific basketball, but it still feels like, they could get better. And that's the scary thing. If you look at, if they're all clicking, if Wiggins and Wayne Selden and Perry Ellis and Embiid are playing well, and Nadir Tharp is initiating the offense and facilitating for others, they might be, the most talented team in the country. And I think when they all put it together, and I think it will happen at some point this year, they immediately enter the discussion as a title competitor.
We're talking with Jeff Borzello, college basketball writer and basketball recruiting writer for CBSSports.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Jeff Borzello. And Jeff, we are the flagship station of Clemson Athletics. What do you make of this Clemson team? They're very, very young, only 3 juniors on the roster to provide leadership. And then also, what do you make out of the ACC and its struggles minus the new additions of Pitt and Syracuse?
Yeah, I think Clemson is doing a little bit better than I thought. I mean, talent-wise, they still don't have great talent, but Brad Brownell's got them all buying in to play defense. They're one of the 10 best the defenses in the country according to efficiency, and that's going to keep them in games. I know they're just coming off a loss to Pittsburgh, a pretty bad 33-point loss, but they beat Duke, they beat Wake Forest, who's beaten some teams, so they're not bad. They're going to be competitive in most games, I think, especially at home. So I think the future is bright. Brownell, his feet might have been a little hot going into the year, but beating Duke and just kind of they're up to a 13-5 start. They're not going to end up with a terrible record. So I think that's a big plus for him. For the ACC, it's been a little disappointing. I think that most people thought it would be the best, one of the best, if not the best conference in the country. But it's been Syracuse and Pittsburgh kind of carrying the load for the league, and those are two former Big East schools that just came into the conference, and they haven't had the rude awakening that some people thought they would. I mean, Duke struggled a little bit. Virginia got off to a slow start. The Florida State's been okay. Maryland's struggling. So if you look up and down the league, there's been a lot of disappointing teams. UNC, BC, Notre Dame. And, it's going to still get 4 or 5 NCAA tournament teams, but they don't have the 3 or 4 Final Four threats that I thought a lot of people thought they would have.
Let's move to the Big Ten, Jeff, and what I think is the second best league, probably behind the Big 12 this year. And I want to ask you about two teams in the Big Ten, but I want to start with Michigan. Is there anybody out there really right now, outside maybe of Kansas and Wichita State, is there anybody really that has found themselves and is playing as good a basketball as Michigan is, going to the Kohl Center and getting a big win over against an outstanding Wisconsin team over the weekend? I mean, right now leading number 10 Iowa, I think by 5 or 6 with under 10 to go. Then you got Michigan on the road at Michigan State this weekend. And Michigan is doing this without Mitch McGary out for the season with the back injury. What do you think about Michigan, the way they're playing right now? How can they go?
Yeah, I actually just tweeted this before it came on the air. And with Mitch McGary, I thought they were a borderline top 25 team. I didn't think they were that good. And then without him, I thought they were at best fifth in the Big Ten, kind of a borderline NCAA tournament team. I thought they were going to struggle their way to the finish line. But they're 5-0 in the Big Ten. They just beat Wisconsin on the road. They're winning. They're beating Iowa, who is playing some of the best basketball in the country. Nick Stauskas has been tremendous. He's kind of emerged as an All-American candidate. He was left off the Wooden Award midseason list today of 25 players, which is kind of disappointing. And, he's just been terrific. And you combine him, Glenn Robinson III is making plays. The big guys, Jordan Morgan stepped up inside, and Derek Walton, the freshman point guard, starting to come into his own a little bit. I think that's been a key for them. If him and Spike Albrecht can continue to kind of handle the point guard, but they don't have to be explosive, but they have to take care of the ball, get other guys into the offense. If they can do that, this team with Stauskas and Glenn Robinson III, those are two guys that can carry them offensively.
Let me ask you, staying in the Big Ten, but let me ask you about the other team, Ohio State. I told anybody that would listen, coming at the turn of the new year, I said, look, you got beware of Ohio State. They have not played anybody. They had one of the weakest non-conference schedules in the country. Yes, they're undefeated. Just wait till Big Ten play starts. Do you think Ohio State has been finally exposed and just really honestly just being a fairly mediocre top 25 team?
Yeah, unfortunately, I probably should listen to you. I mean, heading into the Big Ten play, I thought they could be a Final Four team, and I still thought that, even with that loss at Michigan State, because I figured they played awful, and they still took them to overtime. They nearly beat them, despite playing really poorly. I figured that the defensive backcourt, Aaron Craft, Shannon Scott, could keep them in games. And then, Thad Matta, he always finds ways to get his team to make deep runs in the tournament, but at the end of the day, they just don't have enough scores. But Quentin Ross is their go-to guy, and he's so inconsistent. He's never been a guy that you can really rely on game in and game out, and he has no help. Aaron Craft can't create his own shot. Shannon Scott can't create his own shot. And they just don't have the lineup possibilities like they did last year. Deshaun Thomas, they relied on him so heavily. And, Quentin Ross can't fill those shoes by himself.
We're talking with Jeff Borzello, the college basketball writer, basketball recruiting writer for CBSSports.com. You can find him on Twitter at Jeff Borzello. And, Jeff, I want to ask you about this is one you may or may not get asked about very much, but SMU wins their 15th game of the season last night. That matches their win total for all of last season. I've always been fascinated with Larry Brown, the coach, and what do you make of their chances as they try to make their first NCAA tournament since 1993?
Yeah, a lot of people still don't know what to think of SMU. I'm not sure I do either, just because they had that one good win over UConn. Outside of that, they've been competitive. They almost beat Virginia. at a neutral site. They hung with Louisville for a while. They hung with Cincinnati for a while. But outside that one win over UConn, they haven't really done much of note. And I think that they're still going to get to 22 wins. They're going to have a lot of wins. Can they get another key victory? I think they can. And I think it's because of their defense. They have so much size and length inside that they're going to be in games. They're going to block shots. They're going to out-rebound teams. They're just going to contest every shot. And with that defense, they have enough options and weapons offensively to score enough points to win some games. And, if you look at the AAC, there's kind of a cluster of 5 teams at the top of the league: UConn, Louisville, Memphis, and Cincinnati, plus SMU. And I think all 5 will make the NCAA tournament. But the thing is, any one of those 5 teams can also win the league. So I don't think you can count SMU out of the conference race just yet.
Jeff, before I get to the undefeateds, the 3 remaining undefeated teams, I want to ask you about North Carolina, just up the road here in the ACC. But Roy Williams last year was able to kind of transform that team a little bit in terms of the style of play, how he wanted to play, moving with a little bit more of 4 out and really 1 in with McAdoo. With the problems North Carolina has this year and not being able to make any outside shots at all, being a terrible free throw shooting team, I think outside of Marcus Page, those guys as a team are shooting in the mid-50s. Does Roy Williams have any more buttons, any buttons he can press with the roster the way it is? There's no question North Carolina's talented, but are those problems, is he going to be able to fix them in midseason like he was last year?
I don't think so. Last year, if you look at the talent, they had the weapons and kind of that versatility to where they can go with the 4 perimeter players around McAdoo, because they had Reggie Bullock and P.J. Harrison, they're 2 wings, but those are bigger guys. Bullock and Harrison, they can defend power forwards if necessary. They can score inside. They can rebound. This year's team, they just don't have it. They have 6 or 7 big guys that they're rotating. And, outside of that, there's 4 perimeter players on the team that they use. There's Marcus Page, there's J.P. Tokido, there's Nate Britt, and then there's Leslie McDonald. You can't really have all 4 on the court at the same time. There would be no depth. And it's just not the same. I don't think they would have the same continuity and the same flow that they did last year. It's just not the same team. And to me, I don't know what else he can do. They're just an inconsistent team. It's kind of a joke during the non-conference play. They beat the good teams, lost to the bad teams. Now they're not doing either. They're not beating the good teams, and they're still losing. So, they have to turn around at some point. I still think they'll make the NCAA tournament, but it's going to be backing in. It's going to be as a 10 or 11 or a 12 seed, and it's going to be on the weight of those 3 big wins: Louisville, Michigan State, and Kentucky.
Before we wrap it up, Jeff, I want to ask you about the 3 undefeated teams left in Arizona, Syracuse, and Wichita State. And I want to ask, let's get specifically to the Shockers. A little bit of a local tie. Greg Marshall having coached at Winthrop up the road in Rock Hill from here. A lot of people still, and I think Gary Parrish, one of your colleagues, had a great story today on Eye on College Basketball, y'all's CBS Sports' college basketball site. But people still really haven't bought into Wichita State. But what is it about the Shockers, what makes them so good? But also, when you look and you projected their next loss, you on your feature, Last of the Unbeatens, which I encourage everybody to take a look at, I think you projected their first loss to be at Indiana State in Terre Haute, February 5th. Talk about what it is the Sycamores bring to the table, having Wichita State just beaten them last night by 20 points, but why it is you think that Indiana State could be that first loss, and just tell everybody a little bit about Wichita State, who has not seen them this year.
Well, the thing about Wichita State is that, they made the Final Four last year, so they kind of got on the radar a little bit. But this year's team is better than last year's team, and that doesn't mean they're going to make a repeat Final Four run or they're going to go undefeated and cut down the nets. But that doesn't matter. To me, they're just a better team. They have NBA talent. Clean Anthony Early is an NBA player. Ron Baker is getting some NBA looks. Fred VanVleet might be one of the best point guards in the country. So they have talent. They're not a typical mid-major team that's beating you with a bunch of three-pointers. They're physical. They'll out-rebound you. They'll out-tough you. They have a lot of weapons, and they're a physical team, and they're a strong team. So, a high-major team's not going to walk in and say, all right, we're bigger than them. We're more talented. We just got to make sure they don't hit a bunch of threes. They're going to win games playing the way they want to. And, in terms of Indiana State, I just think that Wichita State won't go undefeated. It's just too hard in the Missouri Valley. They have a lot of, tough road games in that league. And I think Indiana State's the second-best team in the league. And I know that this got blown out. But, Jake Odom, he wasn't fully healthy. He should be fully healthy when they play. Indiana State, to me, they are the best team, best suited in the Missouri Valley to knock them off. If everyone's on the same page or hitting their outside shots, I think they can pull the upset over Wichita State.
Well, Jeff, thank you for your time tonight. Tell people what y'all are working on at CBSSports.com. I mean, you guys, like I said, Night Court is an absolute must at the end of the night. Eye on college basketball. And, of course, people can follow you on Twitter at Jeff Borzello.
Yeah, I mean, tomorrow we kind of started this last week scouting title contenders, where we talked to some opposing coaches about the Final Four threat. Last week we did Arizona. This week will be Syracuse, and then next week we're just talking about them. Might do Wichita State, kind of figure out, how to beat them, what they do well. So if you haven't seen Wichita State yet, tune in next week, and we'll have a full report on that.
All right, Jeff, awesome. Thank you, man. You're absolutely one of the best. I highly suggest our listeners follow you on Twitter and catch up with your work on CBSSports.com. Hope you have a great night.
All right, thanks a lot for having me on.
Thanks
All
a lot,
right,
Jeff.
That's Jeff Borzello from CBSSports.com. And, those guys on Night Court do an absolutely fantastic job, Price. And, again, if I'm busy and I've been in here and had to deal with some business afterwards, that's just something I make sure I check out each and every night. It's almost a little bit like my OCD coming out. I feel like I can lay down and go to sleep after I check that, because I might see some stuff I missed elsewhere.
Yeah, and then in the morning, usually late morning, lunchtime, they do a viewer's guide for what's coming up that night, so you can kind of take a look at some of the big matchups, maybe some good possible upsets matchups. But Eye on Basketball, CBSSports.com's NCAA basketball site is outstanding. Content that's updated all day. Good stuff.
All right, I want to give you, because you brought them up and then we mentioned them. Creighton had lost its last 25 true road games versus ranked teams until the other night, when they just go on the road and blast Villanova. Again, 25 consecutive true road games against ranked opponents. Can you begin to tell me who their last true ranked opponent was that they beat on the road?
Larry Bird in the Sycamores of Indiana State.
You are absolutely correct,
1978.
1978. Indiana State was ranked number 13 in the country.
And you know what? I would venture to go on record right now that Creighton performance Monday night at Villanova probably could have beaten almost any other ranked team they faced during that stretch. The way that, Ethan Raggi, the way he was dropping he was shooting them from darn Lincoln. It was just unbelievable.
Twitter was on fire with their performance, especially in the first half. This hour in Price Atkinson's appearance here at Smoke on the Water, brought to you by Edwards Insurance of Greenville. You can call Trip Edwards at 292-5502. Listen, I'm going to ask you a question. Can you honestly say that you know your insurance agent? We get lost in the mix. Well, I can. Mine's Trip Edwards at Edwards Insurance of Greenville. And I had a situation here at the end of the year where we were dropped by our insurance company on homeowners after 8 years. Never missed a payment. They just decided they wanted to change the rules on us, move the goalposts after the game begun. I went to Trip, who's an independent agent, and I said, I need help. He goes out there and he shops our services. He ends up saving us over $500 a year between our homeowners and our auto insurance. And the thing I love about Trip, Price, if something happens, I know he's going to be there in my driveway waiting on me to help get me out of those issues.
Yeah, when you know your guy and know you can make that personal call instead of dialing a 1-800 number, sitting on hold, going through the whole entire menu, waiting half an hour to speak to a live body, when you've got that personal touch, you pick up the phone, don't even have to dial an area code, you get him right there. You can't beat that kind of service.
Yes, he and Mike Douglas at Edwards Insurance of Greenville, a combined 30 years experience in the industry. Give them a call at 292-5502 or email trip@edwardsinsurance.net, and I promise you, they save me money. They can do the same for you. We are WCCP Talk Sports 104.9 FM, the flagship station of Clemson Athletics.